and welcome to Quarter Time Podcast. I'm Lucy G.
And I'm Lucy P.
And we're here to bring you all the netball goodness you never knew you needed. Hi everyone, and welcome to the second episode of Quarter Time Podcast.
We've been blown away by all your amazing comments from the first episode, and we cannot wait to bring you even more juicy netball combos. A huge thank you to everyone who has shared the love on social media. So Lucy G, what do we have coming up on the show today?
Well, today we've got a lot to talk about. Obviously, it was the first weekend of the Super League, so we have 10 incredible matches to discuss. Because there were so many matches, we can't go into lots of detail for each one. Otherwise, we would be here whittering on to you for hours. So we've challenged ourselves to try and sum up each match in just 3 words. We'll also be taking a deeper look into 2 of the matches that we've chosen as our games of the round, as well as naming our players of the round.
We've also got a very special interview with England Rose and West Coast Fever defender Stacey Francis, where we'll be discussing netball in the media and a little bit about the perception of the sport in general. Let's get straight into it with the opening game of the round. So, Dragons versus Rhinos. Take it away, Lucy G.
So I have gone with debut done right. I mean, what a fantastic entry into the league for Rhinos. A really dominant display from them, showing that they absolutely mean business. And just because they're newbies, that isn't going to stop them.
Mm-hmm.
So next up was Sirens versus Thunder. Lucy P, what have you gone for?
So I said champions pulled through. Although it was a little bit edgy at times, and Thunder probably had a slower start than they would have hoped for. Credit to Sirens, they are just really coming on in leaps and bounds. And I think you can also really tell the influence of Tamsin and Karen Atkinson on that side as well. Loved it.
Definitely.
Next up, it was Pulse versus Storm. What did you think of that one, Lucy?
This is a really tricky one. And I summed it up by saying, what was that? I don't even know what to say about this game. It was a bit bizarre. I felt like it lacked any kind of flow whatsoever, and I really don't think that we saw the best of either team, so watch this space for both of them. Moving on, it was then Bath versus Dragons. Lucy P, what did you go for?
Oh, okay. So for this one, I said total bloodbath. Sorry, Dragons. It was a really unfortunate game for them. And I guess they're probably just going to have to go back to the drawing board, really, with that one. But, you know, Bath, to their credit, were absolutely exceptional. And they're just a cut above, basically, for me this year. And they really punished Dragons in that particular matchup. Next up, we had Sirens versus Stars. Oh, what do you think of that one, Luce?
So this was a really tricky one, but I've summed it up by saying, where was Leota? Now, please don't get me wrong. It's not down to one person to pull their team through to a win, but she is such an instrumental key player for that team. And if she's not firing, the rest of the team have to find a way of pulling themselves through, and someone else has to step up. And I just don't feel that they did that. You could really see the impact of her not so great weekend on the rest of the team. Next up, we had Bath versus Lightning. Lucy P, what are you going for?
Oh, this was an easy one for me. Serena freaking Guthrie. Oh my God, did you see her? She was incredible. And, you know, this game was so close and Lightning could have made it, I would say, but Bath were just tenacious and their structures in attack as well are absolutely spot on. So yeah, can't wait to see this match up again when they face each other. Really good game.
Definitely.
Storm versus Mavericks. That was up next. What do you think, Lucy?
So I went with more to give. I kind of felt like both teams are in second gear for a lot of that game, and neither of them really put their foot down and gave it their all. And I was kind of sat there, you know, waiting for them to really push it and test themselves. But I do think it has to be said, Kadeen Corbin had a particularly good game. Okay, so next up we had Stars versus Wasps. What do you say?
Okay, so for this one, I just said they got stung. It was a statement opening performance from Wasps. They really just came out, did the basics well, put their foot down, and Stars just literally didn't have the answer. I thought that the Stars' defence were not really impacting, and they also were struggling to convert. So kind of lots to work on for them moving into the next round. On to the Monday games, and it was Lightning versus Wasps. What do you think, Lucy?
Oh my goodness. So I have summed this up by saying, what a game. This was a literal nail biter for me. This game had everything. It had me gasping and gooping and clutching my pearls. It was a brilliant display of netball. Loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it. Lastly, we had Rhinos v Mavericks. Last game of the round. What did you make of it, Lucy?
Oh, okay. So for this one, I said, poor old Rhinos. I mean, 3 injuries to starting players is just terrible. And absolutely credit to them. They dug so deep, those remaining players, and they gave Mavs a really good run for their money. Yeah, I actually was expecting Mavs to really push the scoreline out and pull away, but it was pretty close in the end. And Rhinos showed just such fantastic leadership with their players that they still had on court.
Yeah, wishing them all a speedy recovery.
Moving on to our game of the round. Lucy G, which game have you gone for rounds 1 and 2?
So I've gone for the last game of the round, Rhinos v Mavericks. Following on from what you said in your brief summary of the game, I really expected Mavs to storm ahead. If your opposing team are missing 3 of their 7 starting players, and bearing in mind that they were players from each third, so across the court, you would have expected Mavs to really take advantage of this and find a way to step it up a gear. And I just don't think that they did that. Rhinos were able to really dig deep and keep pushing them all the way. And I even thought that they were still going to win it at one point. And I personally think that Rhinos showed how much they were doing it for each other and what a team they are. It was a great demonstration of the culture that Dan Ryan has been building. And I think this was demonstrated in particular by Jade and Vicky, but also Paige Kindred. She put absolutely everything out on court. And in that last quarter in particular, you could see how much it meant to her to do it for the team. And I think we have to remember she's not an out-and-out goalkeeper either, which is really important. I just think Rhino should be applauded for that effort, and Mavs will be disappointed not to have won by a more significant margin. And could that come back to bite them towards the end of the season? We don't know.
I totally agree with you. I think you texted me actually something like, Rhinos are playing their little socks off. And that was so true. You know, they actually deserve to win that. If I'm being honest, you know, they had really fought, and, you know, 3 injuries to starting players is not something that we usually see. And to get through that and then to still, you know, be in the running in that final quarter was really impressive from them. But I do think Mavericks didn't really get out of second gear. I think that they need to, you know, step it up by next weekend. Otherwise, the top teams are, you know, it's going to be too much of a challenge.
Yeah, I suppose for them it's almost a good thing because they know that they've got more to give. But I think full credit to Rhinos, they could have quite easily crumbled under the pressure of losing 1 key player, let alone 2, let alone 3. So hats off to them, and a monumental effort. So what about you, Lucy P?
So I've also gone for the Monday night game. I've gone for Lightning Wasps. This was such a close one and just an absolute ripper of a game. We had pretty much the expected lineups from both teams, with Lightning obviously resting Ella Clark after she just, you know, casually won the WBBL Cup. No biggie. Yeah, whatever. Of course. Massive congrats to her, by the way. So Lightning were coming off the back of that 4-goal loss to Bath, and Wasps had less of a contest in their opening game. So I think both teams were really up for a fight, which was really good to see. The game just really ebbed and flowed, and it's the sort of contest that you really want to see in the Super League, where it goes down to the wire and it's really anyone's game. Those kind of blowout games are just so boring, in my opinion. Audio Berin into GG made a really big difference for me. I love what she's bringing to Lightning this year. Both Dunn and Trolloc just absolutely rock solid for their respective teams, and I thought that they were being fed really well by the midcourt. I actually thought especially Iona Christian had a really strong game in the centre position. There was also that issue with the umpire holding time, and then setting the penalty took ages and the clock ran out, and it was all a bit messy. I'm not really sure what happened there, but it was still within one goal at the break. So, Wasps and Lightning had kept it toe-to-toe all the way up till half-time. In my opinion, Fran Williams got caught out a few times for just not running her feet onto the ball. And I think there was 3 issues with that. So potentially, that's something for her to look at going forwards. And actually that last match winning intercept was off, the pass was going to Fran Williams. So, maybe that's something to look at. But Wasps were really calm throughout. And I think that they just thought they had it in the bag. But then Lightning came out of nowhere and just clinched it, which is amazing. It's exactly what we want to see. So yeah, definitely my fave matchup. And I don't think it was just because it was so close in terms of the scoreline. I actually thought that both sides just played really good quality netball. And while there were a few patches and missed shots here and there, it was actually a great display of keeping a cool head, especially in those high pressure moments.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for me, it showed the importance of not dropping your head when you're a bit behind. Lightning could have quite easily looked at the score and gone, oh, we're 4 or 5 behind. We've only got a few minutes left. Like, this is probably gone now. But actually, no, they got the head down. They just got on with it. And they proved that they are going to be top 4 contenders. So I take my hat off to them. They did terrific.
Yeah, completely agree with you. It reminded me of the game they had a couple of years ago against Wasps, where they also won by 1. And you've seen that gif of Sarah Bayman clapping their hands together. She's like, yes, come on.
Best gif ever.
Yeah, I love that. And she'll be so chuffed to take that early scalp. And, a win against Wasps in the opening weekend set them up really nicely. I also think that, Cholak shot a 95%. 39 goals in 48 minutes of netball is incredible. She is so good for them. I think she got player of the match, Cholak, and I've been so impressed by her. Just everything she brings to the game, the skill, the layups, plucking balls with 2 defenders on her. It's just incredible. So she's not just a tall player. She is an athletic, exciting, accurate shooter. And the other teams need to work out how to stop her, basically.
Yeah, she gets better year on year on year. And I just can't wait to see what she's going to be like at the end of the season. If this is how she's playing in the opening games, boy, you better watch out. She's just going to be a force to be reckoned with.
100%.
Next up, we have our players of the round. I've gone for Vicky Oisola. She had a brilliant outing on both games over the weekend, and particularly, again, that last game against Mavs. She stood up as a leader on court when it was needed most, along with Jade Clark and Rhea Dixon as well. She kept a cool, calm head throughout, and she's instrumental for Rhinos in both attack and defence. And she was top of the leaderboard for deflections and intercepts in both of those games for those teams. And I'm just so impressed with her in general as a player. I think she's really underrated. I'm so glad that she's getting more court time in the England setup, because I think she's a real star of the future. And I can't wait to watch her grow throughout the season.
Yeah, totally agree with you on Vicky. I thought she was a standout, particularly in the second game, and just hustling, getting in under people's feet, getting everywhere. We love to see it from defenders where they just do not give up. And I think that particularly now she's sort of being introduced into that senior England setup, it's given her that extra confidence, and she's playing with it as well. And I think the move to Rhinos was obviously quite bit of a shock, and people didn't really expect it because she'd been at Lightning for a few years, but it seems to be the perfect time for her. And I really thought that, especially in the second game, she stood up and she was exactly what they needed.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely a bold move for her to go to Rhinos, and I think it was a real shocker at the time when we saw it. I think she was the second announcement that they made after Jade. So you knew that they were really making a statement, but I think it's perfect for her because she can go there and she can help shape and create what this team is all about. And I think, I'm just speculating, I don't know for sure, but I imagine she went there partly to have a real stake in that team. And I hope that she's going to be there for a long time as a long-term signing and really be able to shape and mould what that team and that club looks like, and to help, even though she's still young herself, to help bring up the next generation of defensive talent.
For my player of the round, I had quite a lot of contenders, Guthrie, Oyasola as well, and Cholok, but I'm going to go for Fee Toner. I just think she is a total superstar, and I was really gutted to see her go down on Monday. I am a huge fan of her, and the way that she hunts for the ball is just absolutely incredible. I'm really glad she made the move to Rhinos. Similarly to Vicky, she's going to be part of that core group of players, and I just think it's going to be really great for her career-wise. I thought she was instrumental against Dragons, just picking up so much ball, but also her work rate in terms of transitions was immense. Rhinos had turned the ball over and they were under the post straight away in seconds, and it was a lot thanks to her and Jade Clark and them bringing the ball down court so quickly. She just kept hustling for the ball and picking up intercept after intercept. I think she ended the game with 4 intercepts, which was the highest of any wing defence in the opening 10 games. That is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, that's impressive.
That the stats go to goalkeepers, goal defences, but for a wing defence to take 4 intercepts, I think is fantastic. To be fair, at one point I did text you and say, do Dragons realise that Fee Toner is not actually on their team? Because it felt like she was just getting past the ball repeatedly, and it's just because her positioning is so brilliant. She's always in that particular place at the right time. She's a really tough player to come up against, and I personally love a slightly taller wing defence like your Katrina Rory, your Kate Eddy, although obviously not when I'm actually playing, but she brings a huge amount to the side, and as I said, was really gutted to see her go down. We hope that it's not going to be too long that she's out. So fingers crossed for that recovery, and hopefully we can see her back in action again soon.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I am such a Fee Toner fangirl. She is one of my absolute favourites. I was so excited when she moved to Rhinos, and I just think she's a really exciting player to watch. I love her positioning on centre pass. I think it was the game against Dragons. She's just picking up ball for fun. Like, I always felt sorry for Dragons at one point because she was just relentless, and I love that about her, and she's really exciting to watch. So yeah, fingers crossed it's just a minor injury and she'll be back on our screens really, really soon. Next up, we chat to Stacey Francis for our first instalment of Netball in the Media.
We are really excited today to have the defensive dynamo herself, Stacey Francis, on the show with us. Welcome, Stacey.
Hi, thank you.
So great to have you with us. We wanted to ask you a few questions around netball in the media, particularly from a player perspective. So let's dive right in. According to research from 2020 conducted by Women in Sport, women's sport currently makes up between 4 and 10% of all media coverage in the UK. As women make up half the population, this is obviously a pretty depressing statistic. Have you noticed any difference in the reporting of women's sport during your time as a professional athlete from a young debutante to now? And if so, what are those differences?
Yeah, there has definitely been a significant difference. I think in netball especially, the profile has grown exponentially since I've been playing, and especially since I've left the country and I've been playing in Suncorp. I think one of the major things that helps that is success and winning. Unfortunately, you can't get away from having to be a successful team or winning medals before people probably want to pay attention to you. That's the kind of the entry to the door. And then once people realise or that they've been dazzled by that gold medal or that piece of success, they're then able to, to take the sport and the athletes on its other merits, of which there are many. But yeah, I think there's been a significant difference from when I started playing to where I am now. But I think what's good is that there's an appetite, especially from the sports, from athletes, that we need to do more and it should be covered much, much more. And that just because we're getting an increased amount of attention, it doesn't mean that it should stop. It should stop where it is by any means. And yeah, unfortunately, I think a lot of the I think there's a bit of history that plays a part in that, in terms of like how long, especially not so much netball, but, women's football or women's cricket, how long those teams have been around or how long that they've been professional. Usually a little bit to do with money as well, I would say.
So women's sport also release some fantastic research into why teenage girls drop out of sport. So I'm just going to read you a couple of key statistics for a bit of context. So 64% of girls will have quit sports by the age of 16 or 17. And this blows my mind, 80% of girls feel that they don't belong in sport, that the perception is that it's for boys. So do you think that the poor portrayal of women in media that we often see and the lack of female sports coverage that we currently have is linked to teenage girls dropping out of sport?
That's really sad. Really sad. Yeah, because I think growing up, like the places where I felt most like myself or most where I belonged and accepted was to do with sport and something that I excelled at. So that is really disappointing. But yeah, when you were talking about it, I think the first thing that popped into my mind was around that notion of role models. And I think the more you see female role models, people that look like you, people that sound like you, people that you have, common ground with or passions with, I think it automatically like opens more doors in your mind that you're also capable of achieving what that person is achieving. So yeah, I think media plays a huge role in, keeping young women and girls engaged in sport. And also I think the developing sport to become more of a professional option for people is helpful too, because, women are very ambitious and smart and have our fingers in lots of pies. And I think, we want to do what's best. And I think sometimes sport for women doesn't appear to be, a valid option, or you have to choose. And that's definitely an easy exit for women.
Well, actually, one of my favourite ever quotes is by Marion Wright Endelman. You can't be what you can't see. And I totally agree with you. I think it's of vital importance that young girls growing up see themselves reflected positively in the media to encourage them to pursue their goals. So for you, growing up as a Black woman and a member of the LGBTQ plus community, did you have any particular key role models who inspired you either on your netball journey or in life in general?
Yeah, absolutely. I think without thinking of it, exactly as you've just said, like I was living that quote in terms of the people that I aspired to be like. Firstly, it was my dad, because he was a professional athlete, and that was in my house, and I grew up in and around professional sports, and so it was something that I wanted to emulate. But then I was obsessed with Denise Lewis when I was younger, Kelly Holmes, Serena Williams, and then when I eventually kind of got into the world of netball, it was and still is Jiva Mentor. I'm very uncomfortable about that all the time. But there has some phenomenal like defenders that I've always looked up to, and now I'm fortunate enough to call friends like Sonia McCloma, and yeah, it just seems like a thing that I would and could be capable of doing. It's really cringe and probably a little bit big-headed, but I like vividly remember being at my first international, like watching an international, and it was one of Jiva's first caps, and she was only 16 I think when she debuted, and I was sat with my coach at the time, and she was like, oh look Stacey, like Jiva's only young, she's at school, like she hasn't been playing netball for very long, and this is something that you could do. And I was like, yeah, definitely, like I'm going to do that one day and I'm going to be better. I'm doing it. I'm not better yet, but I'm trying my best.
Is it weird for you to think that, you grew up having Jiva as a role model, for example, that there's young girls growing up now who view you as that exact same role model? Is that a bit weird to process? Is that really surreal for you?
Oh, that's mental. Yeah, I don't think of myself in that same context whatsoever. I think I'm quite, no, it is weird.
So talking a little bit more about netball in the media, netball seems to have a bigger image or perception problem than most other women's sports, probably because it's largely not played by men, in that it's a, quote, slower version of basketball, quote, the least cool sport in history, that's from The Guardian, in 2017, by the way, a schoolgirl sport, or even a glamour sport, thanks to that review that we all saw in The Age in Australia. How can we continue to challenge these perceptions even more so than we currently are?
It is, I've kind of got a bit of a devil's advocate view in my mind, because I think the point of difference of netball is that it is predominantly a women's sport. There are obviously male teams, and the game is growing in that area, which is fantastic. But what makes us stand apart is that it is a women's sport. And I think to a certain extent, you can manipulate that and push that to your advantage. So I think it's very easy then for uneducated minds to then, put titles like, a glamour sport out there, or pay far too much attention to what girls are wearing or what they look like. So that's certainly the negative side, but it's also a fantastic strength of the game that it is a women's sport predominantly. It's usually run by women. There are women's coaches in incredibly high positions, which you don't get in sports like athletics. I think I was reading an article on Twitter today about about coaches who have gone to the Olympics in the past 20 years, and there've been no females, or I'm not quoting that word for word, but it was something horrendous like that. So yeah, I think there is a bit of a perception issue. However, it doesn't take very much for that perception to be changed as soon as you've sat down and you've watched a game of netball, or you've spoken to one of the athletes who are across the board an incredibly erudite and passionate group of women who want to achieve on-court and off-court.
Absolutely. And we saw the Witness Fearless campaign that I think it was the Vixens put out as a sort of response to that article that came out. I thought that was just so strong and bold of them. And I do think it is starting to change gradually, but there's still a few people that I think we haven't quite converted them just yet. Do you think that the fact that netball is played in dresses is part of the problem? Do you think if we move towards more like a football style outfit or leggings and vest combo, that would have any impact?
I did have a really interesting conversation with, I think, the Sunday Times about netball outfits and about kit as a result of my ambassador role with Flyhawk. And what I do think is important, and what could be a good way for netball to go, and is potentially a help in terms of retaining women into sport, is a bit more variety. I love putting on a netball dress. It's part of, it's what we talk about. It's part of our language and culture. England netball, you strive to play in the red dress. I mean, it can be a red t-shirt and shorts if you like, but that's what I know. But what is important, I think, is that the kit isn't a reason for people not to want to play. So if for religious beliefs or personal comfort or anything really that you're passionate about, you want to wear shorts or leggings or a jumper or a head covering, then I think the sport can do more and can lead in that way to be more inclusive. I don't think you should change the kit purely because of sexist remarks.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. And love the Flyhawk kit, by the way. Been wearing all of that stuff.
It is incredible, yeah. Very comfy.
Yeah. Do you think that netball players and also coaches are too polite when it comes to critiquing the game? You often hear people say, Team X really brought it to us today, when in fact the team talking won by 20 or 30 goals. We also saw on Monday Kat Ratnapala's interview, a rather bizarre exchange where she seemed to be quite reluctant to say what was really on her mind. Would some of netball's image problems be solved if there was more rawness and honesty in these kind of scenarios? And would this help to quash the idea that netball is a, quote, schoolgirls game?
It's an interesting question. I'm not sure that the 2 points are mutually exclusive. I am married to Sarah Bayman, and there is nothing polite or filtered I wouldn't have said about the way in which she critiques the game. Although maybe it is filtered, and we should all be thankful that she's not really saying what's on her mind. I do think I'm an incredibly honest person. Our household is very honest. And I think that steps forward in terms of professional sports, we can also be more critical and talk more openly and honestly about our own strengths, because I think we can be quite I guess like it's very easy to be very self-deprecating and to put things down when, like you've said, actually there might have been a phenomenal performance, or you just could have outplayed an opposition. That's credit to you. It's not, they did a good job. So yeah, I think that is a space that can be improved upon. I imagine that there are lots of rules and regulations in place as to what the coaches can and cannot say after a game. But yeah, I don't think it could hurt.
I think you and Sarah particularly are very good examples of the kind of people who would say what was on their mind. I remember Joe Harton said something like, "Oh, I don't agree with the super shot. It's a stupid rule." But that was like news. That was like, a newsworthy statement. And it seems to be in other sports, people are so much more forthcoming, and it's just the norm that people and the players particularly have something to say. And I really like what you said about players being self-deprecating. It's so true. Even when a player's one player of the match, they have been selected as the person who has been the most good in the game, and they're still saying, "Oh, it was a really good team effort. Well done, guys." And obviously netball is a team sport, but I think we can have that confidence because we have so many fantastic athletes in the game that they should be able to really stand up and say, "Yeah, I smashed it today, and that was great."
I mean, and it's easier said than done. Like, I don't know, 11 minutes ago in the interview, you asked how I felt about, somebody perceiving me the way I perceived Eva as I grew up in, and then that just makes me feel incredibly uncomfortable. But I also think it's an area of growth to be able to have complete ownership and confidence over your strengths and also your weaknesses too.
Totally agree. Yeah, absolutely.
So if you're a bit of a comments creature like I am, I can't resist going through comments on Sky Sports or BBC Sports and reading all of the sexist and misogynistic comments from men. And I do have to point out, it is always men, but of course, not all men. It's part of the reason that this exists, because netball is kind of pigeonholed as a sport primarily for women, and therefore that it could only be interesting to women. Is the key for greater coverage getting more men on board?
I don't know. I'm conflicted with that as an idea from my experiences in Suncorp, because I know a lot of the rules and regulations that have been tweaked that I do not enjoy to try and make the game seem more appealing to a broader audience. And when you say broader audience, you mean men. And I'm not so sure that's, commercially, for money reasons, it's probably the way for them to go, but it doesn't honour the foundations of your sport. And I don't think it does to change the rules and regulations just to suit a certain demographic or to make it seem more appealing. For me, I find that quite conflicting. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to assume that we're referring to the 2-point shot here.
One of the things on my list.
For me, the issue with that, in terms of trying to appeal to a wide audience, is that changed a fundamental of the game. Whereas the rolling subs, that kind of thing, I could get on board with that, because I do think it's ridiculous we have to stop time for an injury, which is not an injury at all. So that I could get on board with. I think that actually improved the flow of the game. But the 2-point shot, in my mind, changed the fundamentals of the game. And I completely disagree with that on a sort of moral level, that we shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't be changing the game just to get more men on board. And actually, is it more of a marketing thing? Do we actually need to improve the way that we market netball to men without changing the game?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. There's certainly work to be done in terms of visibility. Like, the more the sport is out there, like we alluded to earlier, and the more people are able just to see it for the competitive athletic product that it is, the more eyes I think you will get on it. So like, if it's just there for you to watch, most people will sit down and watch it. I wouldn't have ever thought that I was a fan of rock climbing, but I saw it on TV and I thought, oh my God, this is incredible. Like, these people are absolute freaks, like hanging on a cliff edge by their little fingers. And as a result of that, like, I then, went and searched out rock climbers on Instagram and follow some people, and will now sit and watch it if I see it on TV, which isn't very often. But I think, the more visibility that the sport is able to get, then the more it can be taken on its own fundamental, basis, instead of having to chop and change just to please people and upset the core supporters of the sport.
Touching on the marketing issue that you brought up, Lucy, as well, I think sometimes netball almost markets itself to young girls. I find this with the Suncourt particularly, that a lot of it is targeted to that, you know, young girl age range. And I kind of want to be like, oh, it's adults watching this as well. You know, sometimes all the adverts are quite tailored. And do you find that as well, Stacey?
Yes and no. I completely agree with what you're saying. I think netball certainly has an image, and it is really squeaky clean, which is fantastic. It's a really strong tool that we have at our disposal, but also that there are other sides and facets to netball and netballers and, you know, people that consume netball. And I know that what I find from the marketing, especially in Australia and definitely when I was in New Zealand, is that it is much more about, like, look at how powerful, strong, like dynamic these like athletes are, these women, this sport. But that is a new thing, and it's something that they're a space that they're trying to feel comfortable to sit in. Like at West Coast Fever, our whole tagline and motto is like grit, and that's kind of something that we try and embody from the bottom up, about the hard work and the diligence and the competitiveness that's needed and required. It's not, I think one of the really cheesy lines is, it's not like pretty, it's gritty, and that's what's needed to kind of get the job done. But it resonates and people really like it. So I don't think netball should be afraid to step into that grittier side.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that I like what you said about netball being squeaky clean, and that is so true. But does it mean that people don't take it seriously until this new wave of media and stuff has come in? Like, because there's never any scandals about netball, is there? There's like never any, you know, huge gossip or even news about like who's moving to a new team. Everything's kept quite hushed and behind the scenes, so you don't really get to hear about, you know, what actually happened.
Yeah, I think there's certainly a really nice, wholesome element to netball, and we should definitely keep a hold of that. You don't expect to see George Fisher falling out of a nightclub and vomiting on the street in the back of, you know, the Sunday Times, but you can also talk about grievances as well without it damaging the reputation of the sport. Sorry, George Fisher, I don't know why she was the first person to come to mind. Joe Harton actually did, but I was like, we've already spoke about her.
We seem to have a big problem in netball that sometimes, even when there is really good coverage, there are numerous mistakes or inconsistencies with the reporting. For example, a highlights video of Layla Gusketh that was clearly Jodie Gibson, and a Telegraph article which incorrectly stated that Kawanga had signed for Lightning when she's actually playing for Storm, using photographs of players who are no longer playing for a certain team. And these things happen on a really regular basis. Is this something that you see athletes in other codes not really having to contend with so much?
I mean, those examples are just really bad journalism. And I think that often comes from it not being reported enough. Like, I guess the reporters aren't familiar with the athletes and with the clubs, and so don't know by nature, and I guess don't do their due diligence to make sure that what they're writing is factual. But I think also, if I'm being brutally honest, quite a few of those scenarios, some of the examples that you've given and the ones that spring instantly to my mind, are around misidentification of people of the same race. And that makes me feel very uncomfortable, and is certainly something that has happened to me before, and I've not spoken out about it in the past, but it's something that, you know, myself, Layla, Jodie, anybody really is, you know, no longer willing to tolerate and accept as a mistake, because it doesn't happen, you know, so often with the two blonde shooters in the circle.
Yeah, that is definitely something that I picked up on. And I did see from memory, there was one thing in SSN, I think it might have been Ash Brazel or Cassidy, who was misnamed, but generally speaking, all of the occurrences that I can think of from my memory have all involved Black players. Looking at the frequency, it's not a coincidence for me, and I find that incredibly upsetting. And actually, do we need to do, like I saw Lady Gusketh calling it out on social media, do we need to do more of that and actually kick up more of a stink and hold these reporters to account better?
I think there's certainly a quiet and private conversation that can and should be had, that you can have on your own behalf with, mislabeled photographs with Getty, or your club can have on your behalf. I don't think the way is always to kind of publicly vilify issues like that, but I do think you should also be comfortable to have that conversation publicly, because it just stays being awkward and something that's accepted if you're not willing to point it out. And it doesn't have to be in a public forum, but you should certainly flag it as an issue.
So before we let you go, we would love to hear your thoughts on the opening weekend of the Super League. Which players stood out for you, and who are you tipping for the top 4 this year?
The opening weekend was incredible. I think, lockdown and the combination of the Super League having all of the games on, some form of Sky Sports platform is just the absolute dream. I would never watch as much netball, but there was no reason not to. And we were also rewarded with some incredible matches as well. I think unless you're, a hardcore fan of one team, one-sided games in the favour of your team aren't actually very interesting. But what was great was the level of competition in some of the matches. And for me, I think, on rather biasly probably, what stuck out in my mind was the new and exciting talent that I spotted at goal attack across several of the teams. It was, and it's probably a little bit of my lack of knowledge of the up and coming players in the system, having been away for the past 4 years. But I was really pleasantly surprised and excited about the amount of young shooters that got opportunities to step out on court, and the amount of rotation, whether that's forced or not because of the amount of games and the double headers, but the amount of rotation that some of the teams were happy to put out there and give people the chance.
So who are you tipping for your top 4?
I think my top 4 has changed as a result of the weekend. I probably had a rough idea in my mind as to who I thought it would be. And then now I think there are a few more contenders, which is really exciting. Bath for sure, both pre and post round 1 and 2. I probably wouldn't have put them in at the start of the weekend, but Mavericks by the end of the weekend, I think, and I'm sure that they feel that they have underperformed in seasons gone by. They have always had great players in their team and have just never managed to pull it together. They still have great players. They're missing great players. So, I think hopefully they will continue to go from strength to strength. I don't really want to, but I'll probably throw Wasps in the mix. I think they have an awful lot of belief and confidence from previous seasons and from retention of players. What does that leave us with? 1 spot. I really want to say Pulse. Before the season started, I was incredibly excited about the young talent that they've got in their team. It's so exciting. Liv Tasheen at the back, and I'm obsessed with Hallie. I think she's wicked. They just have some really good players coming through there, and they obviously started and had a really good miniature season last year, and I know that they were packed full of confidence, and it would be really nice to see them string that together this season and prove that last year wasn't a blip and that they've been able to continue to work on that and build momentum going into this year.
I think I can hear Sarah getting her divorce papers ready for you. I'm surprised you haven't said Thunder. Everyone else that we've spoken to has put Thunder in their top 4.
That's what I mean. It's difficult.
It's so hard.
There's probably a 6, I would say.
Yeah,
including
right.
Thunder and Lightning.
Yeah, there's no way. I'd 100% want to throw Thunder in there over Wasps, actually. And it's not because I think Thunder has a great team. And actually what they showed this weekend, I think, is that they have great depth and a great bench too, which is, incredibly important. So, maybe let's kick Wasps out and put Thunder in. Well, it makes no difference to me. I can choose who I like and get to safely get on my plane next week and hear nothing of it.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Stacey. It's been really fantastic to chat to you, and safe travels back to Australia, and hopefully chat to you again soon. Yeah,
fingers crossed. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to the 2nd episode of QTR Time. We can't wait to bring you another special guest next week.
Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and follow us on social media at Quarter Time Pod for the latest netball updates. Let us know which players have stood out for you each week using the story template in our Instagram highlights.
We would also love to hear your predictions for round 3 of the Vitality Netball Superleague. Tweet us with your guesses. We can't wait to see how you get on.
Enjoy the next round of matches and see you next week.
Bye.